Welcome to the Brand Forum. I'm Jeremy Bloom, co-host with my pal Josh Palau, the other co-host. Hi, Josh.
How are you?
I'm great. I'm really excited for this next guest. We have Zach Lain with us. And before we have Zach jump into everything, I want to take the time to go through Zach's accomplishments and his wonderful, wonderful introduction. Zach is the director of global data partnerships at PepsiCo, where he oversees the cross-brand and cross-market piloting, embedding, scaling, and optimizing of all new data assets entering the organization. This includes wider media use cases of advanced consumer targeting and activation, first-party data generation and enrichment, digital shelf analytics, and ad verification, as well as support for supply chain, agriculture, sustainability, R&D, and other teams across the enterprise. He plays a central role in building PepsiCo's consumer data strategy, creating opportunities to further understand snackers and soda buyers in increasingly new and novel ways. Prior to PepsiCo, Zach led data supply at a European CDP. And before that, held a variety of roles at Dow Jones, including a year working directly for the CEO and publisher of the Wall Street Journal. Zach has a law degree from Peking University in Beijing, a master's degree from the London School of Economics, and a bachelor's degree from the University of Chicago. God damn, is he smart.
I feel very unaccomplished right now, guys.
Yeah,
I'm just going to be honest with you.
That part. And that's when he saw snow for the first time at age 18. And another interesting fact, which is absolutely amazing. And when Zach and I first met about 6 months ago, when he told me this part, I was just baffled by it. Zach has been to 94 countries, and he's eaten pho, his favorite food, in 38 of them. With us today, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Zach Lain. Zach, welcome to the Brand Forum.
Thanks, Jeremy. Quite the intro. Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks, Josh.
I mean, you gave us a 5-paragraph essay.
Hey, I tried to be pithy and straight to the point. I like it.
You know how to market yourself. Put it that way. You did a fantastic job marketing yourself, your capabilities. But in all seriousness, we're really excited to have you here. It's been fun becoming friends over the past half year. Your interests, your education, but also your knowledge of this industry is really fun. And so that's part of the reason why Josh and I asked you to be a guest on this growing show. I want to kick it over to Josh, because that intro that I just did was so damn long. No one else wants to hear my voice for the rest of the show.
Well, I would say two things. The first is, I've been meaning to ask you this, and at this point I probably should. So were you an improv kid? Or did you read radio spots at some point in your career that I'm unaware of? Because you do them so well.
It's pretty good.
It is very good. It is very good. If you hit the right tone, anyway, you'd be whatever. I thought you did that at some point.
No, but my bar mitzvah theme was stand-up comedy and improv comedy as a kid. My daughter is very into theater and improv and comedy and musicals. But no, I was a dynamic sales leader for most of my career, but I'm having a blast with the content. Thank you, Josh.
That's good. And I'm excited, Zach, because I'm a big Frito fan. And so I just,
classics.
I really like them. I like them more than I probably should admit that I like them, but I just like, and I try not to get the giant bag, because all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's gone. Like, what happened? And I know what happened.
Or actually,
exactly. I just get I end up eating the entire bag, but it is exciting to have you on the show. It is interesting to hear all the places you've traveled, which is amazing. And so, as you know, we talked about this for if you're just joining us for the first time, guest wise, we want to focus the podcast around brand building in an ad tech world. There's a ton of amazing, I'm saying that out loud, ad tech podcasts out there. We really want to talk about the brand building, the stuff that goes on behind the scenes, because, it's ad tech enables a lot of this stuff. But it is, look, it is, at the end of the day, it is about building a brand and telling a story and making a connection with your consumer. And so, just to kick off, how are you, when you think about that, the role you play and the products that you work with? I mean, how do you balance that performance marketing piece with long-term brand building, under that lens of the fact that we're in such an ad tech driven landscape?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Josh. And firstly, thank you guys for having me on the pod. It's super exciting. I think, data undergirds pretty much everything we do in media. So I appreciate the opportunity to kind of shine some light on it as a specific focus area. So, diving in, performance and brand don't have to be at odds here. They can reinforce each other when done right. the consumer journey that our chip buyers, that our soda drinkers are on is so dynamic. It's an ecosystem that we wouldn't recognize even just a few years ago, right? This is an ecosystem with constant feedback loops across a million different touch points. So my role sits at the intersection of data and insight. So I get the opportunity to see firsthand how these performance signals can inform long-term brand building. I think the key here is resisting the urge to over-optimize for shorter term metrics at the expense of consistency and emotional resonance here, right? We sell chips, we sell soda, we don't sell yachts, right? This emotional connection to our product suite is so very important that has to be built consistently over time. So we try to ensure that even our performance marketing reinforces our brand. We have dozens of brands. We operate in over 200 markets around the world, pretty crazy in its own right. So reinforcing these brands' values, their positioning. So, if we're seeing a conversion coming at the cost of how people feel about the brand, that's a dead end. That's a wrong turn here, right? So at the end of the day, I'm at least trying to work with our brand marketers to know we don't need to choose between brand and performance here. We're building systems where both can thrive together. The long game and the short game should be and are part of the same strategy, building that durable impact over time.
Yeah, that's great. It's funny too, because like your brands are ones that are just people are passionate about. I know
Truly.
Pepsi drinkers I've been in restaurants and it's like, can I get a Diet Pepsi? I will, and Diet Coke. Oh, I'll just have water. It's 100%. And that's why I think and Jeremy knows this, like my hill to die is the way companies separate brand and performance. And so yours presents an interesting lens because again, your products are things people are pretty passionate about. And so you really can't forget that brand, or that brand message, I guess. But it's a nice lead into that second question, which is, so when you think about this brand equity that you guys have, like and you mentioned too, this constant feedback loop, like how are you guys balancing, how do we leverage this consumer data, for growth, but also like maintaining trust, transparency with your consumers?
Yeah, it's a great question, Josh, because you're right. Many of our brands are genuinely iconic. Some of are symbolic of entire categories. Like go to any chip aisle and see, what's a top to bottom here, or even of countries themselves, right? Like some of our brands overseas are pretty much stand-ins for many of these medium to smaller markets we work in. So with that kind of brand equity, a company like PepsiCo holds a huge amount of responsibility here. So this is a place where trust is something that is earned, that really has to be earned through transparency, of course, value exchange, and again, that consistent, responsible data use. I don't collect data just because it's available. That's a recipe for turning your data lake into a data swamp. I heard someone else say that. I can't claim that phrase, but it's so true. We make sure we have to make sure. Yeah, I never heard that, but it's so true. When you have, a data lake is efficient. A data swamp is, mired in compute costs, mired in inefficiency, personnel costs, et cetera, et cetera. So just because we can doesn't mean we should. So, we have to make sure there's a clear benefit to the consumer behind every interaction. That means being upfront, with how data is collected, used. We have to give folks control, and, we have to work with vendors who meet these privacy first expectations. So we have to distill these principles throughout our entire Pardo ecosystem. What my team handles, this is hundreds and hundreds of vendors across thousands of use cases across the entire breadth and depth of an organization as big as PepsiCo. So legal compliance, data security, critical, very much so, especially as regulations are changing like every single day. And again, 200 markets around the world. But PepsiCo doesn't view trust as built through, the little checkbox click through or like fine print. It has to be built through action over and over across every interaction. So I think when data is used in a way that feels fair, I guess is probably the best word, it can strengthen that relationship with consumers. That mindset of intentionality with every consumer touchpoint is definitely one of the bedrocks of how we approach the enormous brand equity that a company like PepsiCo holds.
So what are the biggest challenges you face when you are building a brand in today's overall landscape? When you think about just all of that data, when you think about everything that comes with building 200 markets. Yeah. You've been to half of them.
One day. Yeah, no, Jeremy, it's a great question because again, we are selling chips and soda. I think this is hardly rocket science here, but it's really attention scarcity. I mean, hell, I think we all feel this. How many times, I was just doing this earlier today. How many times have you been, watching an Instagram reel, watching a TikTok video, you're doing laundry and you forgot your socks and, on the way to go get the extra sock or, whatever you're doing, you remember you got to floss, so you go to your phone and you open the Amazon app to buy more floss, but then you have work emails and notifications and you're like, what the hell am I even doing at all? That's how I feel all the time, pretty much. So
you've been tested for ADHD as well?
Right.
Cool.
Yeah, of course.
Just me. Great.
Party of three.
Seriously though. But seriously, there's never been more, again, hardly rocket science here, but there's never been more competition. There's never been more competition for people's time and like emotional bandwidth. When you think about a company like ours, again, not yachts, not sports cars, not watches, not even makeup, right? These are everyday products that people interact with casually, actually more than casually. They interact with them habitually. And I think that's actually a key difference here. That means our brands have to work even harder to show up in ways that are relevant and respectful. You can't just push impressions and expect connection, right? I think, again, you'll hear me harp about this more than once here. One of the risks here is over optimizing every little piece of data, every little piece of communication in pursuit of short-term efficiency. I think that can erode what makes a brand memorable in the first place. Think about the brand equity Mountain Dew holds, right? It's gigantic. So, my team's job is to help navigate that tension. We want to use data to inform, but not totally dominate our approach. I think the best brand building happens here when we simplify here. Again, this is, maybe easier said than done, not when we flood teams with signals and 8,000 Power BI dashboards, right? I think being clear-eyed about what a brand is and isn't, especially when attention is this fractional, is absolutely key.
Welcome back to another snack-sized bite of Dishing with Divas. This week, we're snacking on the saltiest takes and sweetest insights on the state of streaming with Comscore data diva, Stephanie Morales, VP of Media Intelligence at Magna Global. Steph, what are the biggest challenges to accurately measuring streaming audiences today?
One of the biggest challenges we face is really having a true cross-platform measurement and, being able to follow and understand the consumer journey throughout, not just streaming, but all media types. In such a fragmented landscape, consumers are just leaping from one streaming platform to another, using all different apps, multiple devices. And as an advertiser, it's really important that we understand the deduplication across a campaign, make sure we're hitting the right frequency and all that kind of stuff. Over the past 2 or 3 years, I would say we've really seen a huge evolution in streaming measurement, and we're definitely moving in the right direction. But there's, still a lot of work to be done in this space to get a full cross-platform holistic look at a campaign.
Work is never done. From crunchy insights to sweet surprises, we hope this episode satisfied your craving for all things streaming.
Yeah, it's funny. I've got like this list of guiding principles that I use them, and every job I go to, so it tweaks it a little bit, but this one that's been consistent has been this thing that I say, let's be data led, not data limited. And the concept is kind of what you said. I mean, it's yes, like we should look at the data, but the most oversimplified, but the example that I've used that it resonates with is like, look, it's channels like YouTube are hard to manage, but do we really think they're not working? Right? Like, I'm pretty sure they are. Same thing with like linear television. I mean, the measurements, always been an issue. Sure. But yet we know, so it's just, I like the thought process and how you're talking through it, because again, it's like, if you over optimize, you're going to move things away. And the reality of your products is a lot of them are in a different price point. So your point on the yacht thing is like, no, like you get that consumer, he's going to spend a lot of money and that's going to years down the line pay off. But you know what? You tweak something the wrong way. And, between the 50 cents between your product versus a different product, like gone. And you can't lose that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. 100%.
Okay. Well, with that, this is a question for both of you, just from an outsider looking in, those that are watching, those that are listening. What trends or technologies do you think are actually going to shape the future of brand building? Because when you think about legacy brands like Mountain Dew, Doritos, the list goes on and on and on and on, items that are in all of our pantries, our cabinets, our cupboards, there are a lot of trends and technologies that are taking place that are going to shift things based on incrementality, based on just those tiny, tiny shifts.
I have a trend, Jeremy, not a technology. I think everyone's talking about AI, and yes, it'll have a huge role to play in media, et cetera. But I don't want to talk about AI
later.
Yeah, I really don't want to talk about AI. I think,
we don't talk about it, guys.
I think the future of brand building is going to be, at least in part, shaped by how well we adapt to new consumer expectations, not just how quickly we adapt to new tools here. What's more interesting to me coming from the data side of things is how, is noticing and really observing and tracking the shift in how people define value and how they define relevance and how this has shifted over time. These experiences at which our consumers interact with our product suite are becoming way more fluid. These interactions are happening in commerce. They're happening in community platforms. They're happening in what we're calling phygital spaces, physical spaces that feel digitally infused. It's a horrible word. Kind of try to spell it. It's real hard. Oh, it's not. It's digital.
I was phonetically, as you were talking, I'm like, how would you spell that?
It's like, where does the Y go? It's like, it doesn't really work. But like these visual experiences, right? They're happening at Coachella. They're happening in Minecraft. They're going to happen in space one day. I think the brands that thrive will be the ones that show up meaningfully across all these different touch points. So, to pick on space, don't be Katy Perry on Blue Origin, without losing their identity. I didn't want to work that in somehow. I didn't want to work the Katy Perry reference in there. So without losing their identity. So, this sounds really easy, right? This is just, but it's actually really, it's not. It's coordinated cultural fluency. It's not tech. It's not data. Yes, these things will be very important as well, but this is going to be a challenge. How do we speak authentically in a relevant way that's practical, that's poignant? This is going to be a challenge I think we're going to see brands, not just ours, but brands in general kind of grapple with more and more as time goes on.
Yeah, I don't have a, I know you asked the question about a technology or something. I don't have an answer either. What I do have is a little bit of a build on what you were saying, Zach, I think it's there's just so many, there's so much media and there's so many places, and was it Eric who says that everything's an ad network? And it's starting to,
Eric Seufert. Eric Seufert for sure. Yes.
Yeah. It's just and it kind of is. So I think it's this part of like, where do you intersect? Where do you not, and the multi-devices, like what you described, Zach, about just going to get your sock out of the dryer and all the different touch points that happen along the way. So I think it is the brands that can stick through that and sort of thread the needle on that. And I think those are the ones that are going to win, the ones sort of saturate in other different places or who try to be everywhere. I think that's the real challenge. There's so many wonderful opportunities, but you have to know your audience, you have to know your brand and figure out if those two things work. Then those are the places you need to be. Wait, I have one other thing. Sorry. And I'm not supposed to talk this much, by the way, guys. Just to be clear.
This is your turn to talk.
But
I love it, Josh.
The only thing I will say is I also think that consumer packaged goods and a lot of other ones that are getting hit by disruptors, I don't know. I tried to buy something the other day from one of these companies that's trying to disrupt you guys, Zach, and it's expensive. Right? It's like a 12 pack of CBD or THC infused seltzer, which I know you guys don't sell that, but it's just I don't want to spend $47 for 12. No, I'm okay. And I'm just going to drink my Tito's instead. And so I think that's where I think some of those brands, where they're breaking through, I don't think they're taking giant chunks out of market share, and they're doing wonderful jobs in building their brands. I feel like a lot of the D2C brands are capping out in some capacity because there's so many of them in the same space, and also just some of the price points and ways they're interacting just aren't going to break through.
No, Josh, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head right there, right? I think, given where our product suite plays along the pricing spectrum, adds a whole new specter of, decisioning that our consumers are making, that will make, and then you throw in 1,000 different, people are interacting with them on their phones in real life, in phygital spaces, soon in space, all over. It's just it's to reinforce, it's complicated. It's really, really complicated.
All right. So when you think about the next generation of consumers, and this is another, again, we ask this question a lot about how you're preparing for the next generation of consumers. For me, Pepsi's very interesting in this scenario, because we talked about, again, the lead up to, people who's starting these products, they stick with them, they're lifelong staples. And so they're sort of so I definitely want to hear your answer. A small part of me is just well, my dad had Pepsi in the fridge, so I have Pepsi in the fridge. And, unless something changes in your, we had Fritos, so I had Fritos. But I'm so curious, you can't possibly rest on that. And so how do you guys think about that?
Yeah, it's a great question, Josh. This is hardly a novel view at this point, but it doesn't make it less true. Younger consumers, and, we can cleave them into, obviously we have the younger set of millennials, Gen Z, Gen Alpha. It's so crazy. They all have different relative to each other expectations around, authenticity, younger folks want brands that reflect, at least, I don't want to say their worldview, but, at least part and parcel of their beliefs and respect their time. I feel like that latter part is often skipped. Have you ever had a meeting cancel a few minutes before it's supposed to start and you're like, yes, I got 30 minutes back. That's what young people are like at every juncture. They really value, I know, seriously, same. They value that impactful brevity. So this means we're showing up in new ways, new moments, new spaces, etc. As I mentioned before, it's the Coachellas, the Minecrafts of the world, live events. But, it means we have to be, I think the word I keep going back to is crisp. They want moments of connection that are meaningful, that are poignant, that are brief. So, this is one of the challenges that we're embracing as we evolve to speak to new sets of folks across the huge set of categories that PepsiCo operates in. And we're using data to help connect with these micro segments of folks, for a brand-led company like ours with products that cater to literally billions of consumers, not even on a yearly basis, on a daily basis. We can't just buy media. We have to build relevance. So data, and often missed, data and the people and platforms and the knowledge to make sense of that data help us understand how these generations engage with our different product suites. So, how we can create experiences that, feel less like advertising, more like participation. I, for one, love a good gamified experience. But yeah, this is the set of challenges that the company with our huge set of brands is actively leaning into.
So when you think about all the different products you have, all the products you're pushing, all the products that you're marketing, and all the data you have on billions of consumers that are eating billions of different chips, billions of sips of tens of billions of sips of soda taking place daily, help us understand, when was the first time you, Zach, believed that marketing actually works?
For me, it was probably, I make something was a little bit of a weird edge. It was probably Nickelodeon in the 90s. It wasn't just one ad. It was this entire brand ecosystem, I guess we would say, they built specifically around slime. Remember that yellow, green, plasticky slime? Getting slime became this weird and awesome badge of honor, I guess you'd say. It didn't matter if you were 6 years old or you were Antonio Banderas, right? Everyone wanted to be part of it. And that's really cool. What's wild is slime wasn't even a product. It was a feeling, a visual, a texture, the smell. I feel like I can remember the smell, even though I never really smelled it. It's imprinted on my mind somehow. Right. It became this ritual, and how Nickelodeon turned this bucket of green toxin into this symbol of fun and rebellion. I didn't understand it then, but obviously looking back with the lens I have now, that was brilliant brand building. It wasn't driving a single sale. It was creating a world, kids and teenagers wanted to live in. I want to live in that world right now. They reinforced this across all their shows. They had events in Orlando. I grew up in Florida, and we would go and see this. It was wild. And their tie-ins with other partners like McDonald's. And, this is, again, this is what good branding should be. It taps into emotion, memory, identity. And so every time I see green slime, every time I see that color, my brain instantly goes back to Nickelodeon from 30-something years ago. I think that is powerful marketing.
It is. 100% agree. Yeah, totally. So sort of flip it all the other way. If you weren't in marketing, what would you be doing?
When I was a kid, I used to want to be a toll booth operator. My parents every day on the way to school.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh.
Would go through a toll, and sitting in the back seat, seeing my parents give money to this man in a booth. I was like, wow, this is really cool. Right. How did he get to be so lucky to be here? It's I want to do this. Did not become a toll booth operator. But seriously though, I think in another life, I would have been a pilot. I do traveling. I do flying. I love being at the airport. I know people hate going through the security line, and, I kind of love that. I love being at the airport. Trying to guess where people are going. I don't hate going through TSA, hot take. So yeah, I would probably be a pilot.
I like that.
Another version of that.
By the way, I like the, by the way, I agree. I actually like the airport too. But one of the things I find the most fascinating about the airport is that everybody goes there to go somewhere except the people who work there. And that's the weirdest thing for me. I'm just wait, you all
that's an
work
interesting
here,
observation.
But none of you but everybody who's here is not going to stay here. We're all going somewhere else except you guys. So that's
We're
why
all transient except for you. Wow, Josh, that kind of blew my mind a little
That's
bit.
the only thing that's ever freaked me out about the airport. But I agree with you. I'm not an airport at all.
When it comes to the airport, where I always get stuck is when I see birds and just I fly out of O'Hare all the time. And so it's fascinating to me just seeing how birds will just live there and like create their own habitat. Obviously, they'll fly out over time. That's what I tell myself. But regardless, like there's something very ironic about going to an airport where you're going and humans are flying, yet birds are in the airport. So
I feel like it's one of those like art imitates life type thing.
That's exactly it.
Flying machines, flying animals are right there.
Like The Far Side, like Eric Larson's The Far Side. Yeah. That's exactly it. Well, Zach, this has been awesome. You've been such a great guest. This has been a wonderful conversation. I can't believe the amount of countries you've been to. I do understand your fascination of data and storytelling and being able to and being a well-respected marketer, because it has to do a lot with your education, your willingness to travel, taking yourself out of Florida, going to Chicago, London, China for your education, going and traveling all around the world to get those cultural experiences. It really builds character, and we really appreciate you sharing a bit of yourself with our audience. So thank you.
I really appreciate it, guys. Thank you for the time. Yes, been great.
And Josh, great shirt. Yeah, you don't need some ATG merch. You need some the CMO of New York and Delaware.
You got to get an AdTech hot pillow. Got to get the ATG merch, the real OG merch.
Amazing! I can't believe you have that. That is a collector's item. That is amazing. All right, Zach, thank you very much. Josh, until the next one. Bye, guys.